Hello everyone, today I'm in Brooklyn and this is looking towards downtown Manhattan with the that tall building in the center. That would be the World Trade Center building, and of course the Brooklyn Bridge is directly ahead. And they have this this pedestrian area here that goes right down the center of the Brooklyn Bridge, so it's possible to walk all the way to Manhattan and cross the Brooklyn Bridge from here. But I'm just going to walk to downtown Brooklyn, and this area directly to the right, this is the Dumbo neighborhood of Brooklyn, and it looks like there's quite a bit of new construction in this area. And just to give you an idea of how expensive this area is right here, this kind of interesting skyscraper just right in the center, it kind of looks like maybe a C-shaped building. That is the Olympia Dumbo building, and that was just built last year, and a one-bedroom apartment there starts at $1.9 million, and that's not a very large apartment. That would be maybe about 600 square feet. And from here I'm just going to walk to the east, and it's not too far of a walk to downtown Brooklyn from here. And as you can probably see, there's a lot of traffic already. It's about noon, and there's pretty much always traffic. I don't think it matters what time of day that you drive around here, which is one other reason why not to drive. And it's also pretty easy to take the subway from here. And actually I just got off of the subway, and here's the one of the paths that leads to the subway, and those stairs just go directly under this bridge. And I would say the subway stop is maybe a couple hundred feet from here. And this road that's to the right of me, this is the Brooklyn Bridge Boulevard that I'll be following part of the way. And just to name a few of the buildings to the left, there's the New York City College of Technology building, and also to the right of that there's some more apartments and condos. And sometimes I can look these up on my phone just to see whether it's condos, or actually those almost kind of look like public housing, just because just large brick buildings that are just kind of boxy like that, they sometimes are like public housing. And they actually have quite a bit of public housing in Brooklyn. They also have quite a bit of public housing just in New York in general, but just more so in Brooklyn. And actually these are privately owned condos, and the cheapest one here that I could find, a one bedroom, is $650,000. So the price goes down quite a bit if you don't mind to live in an older building. And across the street from these condos there's a park area, and this is called Whitman Park. And these buildings right next to the park would be the U.S. District Court, basically a federal court building here. And the building next to it is also showing up as a federal court. And they have a lot of courthouses and other governmental buildings here in downtown Brooklyn. There's also a state Supreme Court, and we'll get to that probably in another 5 minutes or so. And I now just walked past the tree area, and this is one side of the front of the post office, and it's kind of an interesting looking building. It's pretty cool to have a post office in there. And across the street there's more government buildings. This large brown building directly ahead is a courthouse, and that would be the Kings County Family Court. And there's also a middle school right next to it. The smaller building right in front, that would be the Urban Assembly of Math and Science building. And I'm just going to cross the street here and walk over to Columbus Park. And this would be the east side entrance of the post office. And there's also a U.S. Attorney's office in here as well. So that's all federal government stuff. And off to the left, this would be Columbus Park. And it looks to be a little bit of a smaller park, but still, I guess big enough if you're in downtown Brooklyn. Looks like it'd be a good place to walk your dog. And there's also more courthouse and government buildings in this area. To the left, that would be the New York State Supreme Court building. And directly ahead, the I guess it's a little bit further in the distance, that would be the Brooklyn City Hall. And I think that building's mostly closed. I don't think they use that any longer for a city hall. And it looks like they have some interesting artwork set up here, and it's kind of locked up in these cages. And across the street there's a bank building. That's a TD Bank. And these other buildings to the right, they're just showing up as office buildings, and they look rather older. Used to be a kind of an older brick building, and on parts of it, the side of it, looks like they got some sort of canvas covering the windows. So I'm not even sure if that's even being used for an office or not. And directly ahead here is another little subway station. This one serves the 2 and 3 lines and the 4 and 5. And this is a better view of the Brooklyn City Hall building. And this is showing up as being built in 1848. And here's some of the buildings, the older brick buildings across the street, and it looks like they're doing some work on those. And I'm now going to walk back to Brooklyn Bridge Boulevard and then go up Fulton Street. And there's actually a couple of rather large buildings being built in downtown Brooklyn, and though we're not too far from them, these other kind of smaller buildings really kind of block the view out. But we should be able to start seeing some new construction coming up pretty soon. And also another interesting thing to point out is these bikes off to the left, you could rent those by the day, and they're pretty cheap. I believe they're about $2–3 per day, and those are sponsored by Citibank. And we're now almost to Fulton Street, and it looks like they have some street vendors here. And I'm now at the intersection of Brooklyn Bridge Boulevard and Fulton Street. And from this point you can see quite a bit of the new construction in downtown Brooklyn. The larger skyscraper to the right in the center there, that would be the Brooklyn Tower, and that building is approximately 1,000 feet tall, and that is still under construction. And the one in the center, that would be the Brooklyn Points condominium building. And now just crossing Brooklyn Bridge Boulevard, and there's also some condos in this area as well. This building across the street, this is the One Borum Place, and looks like they have retail on the bottom and condos up above. And just to give you an idea how expensive this area is, a 2-bedroom apartment in that building there is currently renting for $6,800 per month. So this is still a rather expensive area. But I should probably also point out too that you don't really have to go too far from here to where there's a lot of public housing. And New York in general has public housing, but there's probably a lot more of it in Brooklyn than there is in Manhattan. And I would say it's maybe a half-mile walk from where I'm at, but I'm really not going to have time today to check out the public housing buildings. And I'm now walking on Fulton Street, and they have some shops here. Here's the ABC Superstore, and this looks to be a clothing store. Looks like mostly women's clothing. Followed by another clothing store. This one's called New York Style. Looks like they have men's shoes. Followed by a T-Mobile telephone. And it looks like it's trash day here, or no, that guy's probably just setting up his store. It's pretty common for people just to pile their garbage bags in the street and have the trash trucks collect them from there. So I wasn't sure if that was just trash day or not, but I guess it's just one more street vendor. And across the street there's a pharmacy. That's called the Dwayne Reed Pharmacy. And this looks to be a pretty older building here. Looks like it doesn't look like it's currently being used. I'm not sure what it is. It had a W on the front of it. I'm almost gonna guess it could have been a Walgreens, but And the next business is a jewelry store slash pawn shop. And across the street there's a Gap clothing store. And then another business across the street, a Foot Locker shoe store. And it looks like they have a McDonald's, but that looks to be closed. See if I get a better view of the front of the McDonald's. And that looks like it's been closed for quite some time. It's about noon, lunchtime right now, so if McDonald's was going to be open, it would certainly be by now. And this seems to be mostly kind of older buildings in here. There's another clothing store, a Macy's department store across the street. And that looks to be a pretty nice Macy's. And off to the right, this is called Fulton Hats. It looks like they also have some jewelry in there as well. Followed by a shoe store. This is called Rainbow. And on the left is a H&M department store. And that's a Swedish-based department store. They have quite a few of them in Manhattan. Followed by a Nordstrom Rack and a TJ Maxx and Old Navy. So these are pretty common clothing department stores. And to the left there's a tattoo body piercing store, followed by a dental office. And here the street opens up a little bit so we can see the Brooklyn Tower, and that's currently under construction. And looks like they have the a temporary elevator shaft there attached to the side of the building, and that is just a very, very tall building. And this street here looks kind of interesting. It's called Abolitionist Place, and since I guess the tour has been a little bit boring so far, just gonna see if I can find a little bit more history here in downtown Brooklyn. And just from a quick Google search online, it says some of these buildings, they have an association to the Underground Railroad to help free slaves that escaped from the South. And most of these buildings apparently have been torn down, the ones that date back to the Civil War. But there might be a couple of them that are still standing. And this area here, the buildings across the street would be a pretty good example of the mix of the new and the old. There's a tall, newer skyscraper that's called the 1WSQ, and that is a office building. And right next to it there's this old looks like kind of boarded up building, and that looks like that's going to be torn down. And there's quite a bit of new construction right next to this area here. That large white building in the center, that would be Brooklyn Point, and that's a newer condo building. And on this side of the street, here's a Sheraton Hotel, and this is showing up as a 4-star hotel. And it's a bit cheaper here in Brooklyn than it is in Manhattan. A room at that Sheraton is $262 for one night. And here's a little bit better view of these buildings behind there, and also the Brooklyn Tower is that large building off to the right. And looks like I'm almost to this historic church building that I'm seeing on my map. And this looks pretty interesting in here. That would be part of that church, and they built a rather large building directly behind it. But that is a Catholic church. I'll see if I can get a better view of the front of it. And I'm now just crossing the street. This is Willoughby Street. And there's also a little deli here. This is called the Brooklyn Deli. I'll see if I can check this out real fast. And it looks like they have a lot of sandwiches. They don't have their prices, but it does say a chopped cheese and onion and bacon sandwich is $12 today. And to the left, here's a pizza parlor. This is called the Little Pizza Parlor. And this is kind of an expensive pizza place. A large cheese pizza there is $27. And here is this church building here. And this is the Saint Boniface Catholic Church. And this was built in 1847. And that's a pretty cool building. They have it sandwiched in here with all these other, looks like these are office buildings across the street. And JP Morgan is one of the tenants of this building here. And right next to this church, here's these row houses, and these also date back to the late 1800s. And it does not look like anyone is living in these. Let me see if I could peek in this window here. It looks pretty empty inside. I'm just seeing some plaster on the floor. And I'm now going to walk back to Fulton Street and continue up to the Brooklyn Tower. And I'm now back on Fulton Street and Abolitionist Place, where I took the quick detour, and I'm going to go back to walking to the Brooklyn Tower, that new skyscraper right there. And looks like we're pretty close to it. I'd say another 2-3 blocks. And it looks like parts of this area have come back a bit. You can kind of see a little bit newer construction even in this area. Like there's a Chipotle and Bank of America building across the street. And those look a bit newer. And then on this side, I guess you have a lot of older vacant storefronts. And looks like there's a beauty supply wig shop. And this restaurant across the street looks a little bit interesting. I'm going to check this out. It's called Fulton Hot Dog King, and it looks like They got a lot of hot dogs there. And let's see, of course they have a hot dog, and it is $2.50, and there's a lot of different varieties of hot dogs. They have a cheese sausage dog for $3.50, and all kinds of burgers. They got a turkey burger for $7, and I'm now walking back up Fulton Street. And we're just about in front of the Brooklyn Tower, and it looks like there's a couple more rather interesting buildings across the street. See if I can just get a little bit better view. And just checking my phone, that is a Dime Bank building, a Dime Savings Bank, and that dates back to the mid 1800s. And this is one more interesting situation, how there's the old and the new just right next to each other. And here's a little bit better view of this Dime Savings Bank of Brooklyn. And that was built in 1859, and Dime Savings went out of business in 2002 when it merged with Washington Mutual. And then Washington Mutual, they're the bank that had some trouble in 2007, 2008 with the housing crisis, and they were purchased by JP Morgan. And it does not look like there's a bank currently here. Just crossing Fulton Street. And this bank building looks like it's been closed up for some time, but that's that's almost 150 years in business, and it's now just a vacant building. And directly behind this bank, that's the new Brooklyn Tower, and that should be completed sometime this year. And just a little bit more information about the Brooklyn Tower. It is a 93-story building that is approximately 1,073 feet tall. Just a very, very tall building. It doesn't really matter where you are, whether it's New York or they don't even have buildings this tall in Los Angeles or Las Vegas, but super tall building. And it's going to be a rather expensive place to live. A studio apartment is approximately $800,000, and that really isn't going to be a very large apartment. And all of those people living in the Brooklyn Tower will have quite a bit of shopping just right on Fulton Street here. And right across from them is a cookies department store, and it says it's a department store for the kids, and looks like they have a lot of kids clothing and toys. And I'm just going to continue walking up Fulton Street. And this building off to the left, it looks to be vacant. And I'm not sure if that's because of the COVID, or maybe they're going to redevelop this whole area. And this part also looks to be under construction, where they have this wall. I could hear some machinery here. Looks like they're drilling for a foundation, actually. And there's some more shops across the street. A Snipes shoe store, followed by a Burger King, which is kind of sandwiched in between a couple of vacant shops. Looks like at one time there was a Pretty Girl fashion store, followed by a hair, wig, and beauty supply store. And then this building here, this also looks to be under construction, and this is showing up as a office building. But what's also interesting about this building as well is it's right next to a rather older looking building, and it's just kind of sandwiched just right in between these older buildings here. I'll see if I can get a better view of that from the other side of the street. And I just crossed Flatbush Avenue, and the older building right next to that new office building looks to be a TD Bank. And it's still pretty neat how they could just sandwich these new buildings just right in between these older ones, and they could pretty much build wherever they want. And there's quite a bit of construction in this area. Looks like the vacant lot across the street is something's being built on that, and right next to that would be the Brooklyn Tower. And looking further down Flatbush Avenue, there's also another building that's being built just maybe 2-3 blocks down the street. They got the crane on top, so there's quite a bit of construction going on just right in this area here. And I guess if I had a little bit more time, I would maybe check out the not so good part of town. On my map, there's several large public housing buildings just maybe a quarter mile from here. And I'm now about a quarter mile from the Brooklyn Tower, maybe probably a little bit less. And these would be the Whitman housing projects. And these just go on for block after block. I would say there's at least a dozen blocks of these, and it's just a massive housing development, public housing, and it looks like they're also under construction as well. And what's interesting about this area is on one side of the street you have this public housing, and then on the right side there's a lot of office buildings, and some of them are kind of newer offices too, like this one directly ahead. And this is the Brooklyn Hospital Center. And it is rather interesting how the rich and the poor live so closely together and have to share such a rather small city. But I should also say that these are the fortunate poor people that get to live in these public housing projects, because you should keep in mind that there's a lot of poor people that don't have a place to live and that are homeless. And that will conclude my walk-in tour of downtown Brooklyn. Thank you for watching.